This is Suzanne Kinney, and you're listening to the Crime and Canvas podcast. In the previous episode, we discussed laundering the ledger, the Smithsonian, Anthony Moore, and a fabricated history. Today, in episode 19, we are discussing the painting is finished and the room is watching. For years, the story of the Gardner heist has been told through the filter of institutional silence. I am sure you're asking, just as I do, why the major news outlets haven't covered the forensic realities I've uncovered. The answer is not that they are unaware. The media doesn't print this story because they are likely blocked by their lawyers from printing anything about the Koch brothers. So they have to believe this story more than they fear the risk of a lawsuit. I get that, but I don't have to agree with it. There is a new risk they haven't accounted for. What happens when the whistleblower side of the ledger grows heavy enough to unbalance the scales? What happens when the truth becomes more dangerous to ignore than the lawsuit is to report? Visit crimeandcanvaspodcast.com and click on the evidence link in the top navigation to read my newsletter issue titled Proof They Know, the FBI and ISGM Digital Audit Trail, where you get a glimpse at what the analytics show. Prior to 2021, I was sending out emails for many years. I decided instead to send out newsletters, which would be the best way I could organize the communication I was sending out and record who was receiving the information. Over the years, I have removed those who don't engage the information, so my newsletter became a very important tool for me. I don't send out these newsletters to aggravate or frustrate. I send them as a matter of public record because apparently the media is currently unable to print this story. I am bypassing their silence entirely. By using my newsletter and adding new receivers to my distribution list, ensuring the forensic realities I have uncovered reach the public directly. Up to this point, all emails and newsletters have been sent to email addresses where I thought it was their job to help me. We didn't force Frederick R. Koch to the Okeechobee flea market. That was his own doing. His immense wealth didn't keep him from that booth. It only gave him the means to use it as a dumping ground for his conscience. He chose to offload those masterworks there, treating them like common goods, only to leave my mother behind to shoulder the weight of the guilt he was so desperate to discard. Well, I'm here to stand up for my mother. You've all watched the movie Dirty Dancing, one of the most famous lines in cinema history, delivered by Patrick Swayze. Nobody puts baby in a corner. Well, no one puts my mother in a corner. I realize the gravity of the theory I'm presenting, but I know the truth of my mother's story. And once you finally hear that story, you'll be amazed by it because it was scripted by a Yale drama graduate who happened to be a billionaire. He wrote the performance. I'm simply the one revealing the reality behind the curtain. I strongly believe that if I didn't have the Hey Would You Blow Me signature on my Change.org petition, the one signed by Anthony Moore, director of security at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, that signature, that once I arrived at Isabella's will, was the guaranteed key to get through Harvard's door. I wouldn't have your attention right now without that signature. That single signature provided the undeniable proof of an active breach of fiduciary duty. The room is finally listening to the evidence. The day I emailed Harvard and the state of Massachusetts, I didn't hesitate. I just hit send without even pausing to look at the weight of who was on the receiving end. Only afterwards did it hit me. Did I really just do that? I had been walking on this path for 15 years, knowing I had solved a heist. but I hadn't realized I was tracking the largest art forfeiture in history. I never expected to land at Harvard's door. Harvard never expected me to land at their door. But when I finally arrived, I didn't hesitate to open it. It was like, of course, the story just got bigger. Why not? Look at this little flea market story that goes from being this mysterious man at a flea market who does a hospital scene that he dies to then fast forward to when we start unraveling it and we find it in reverse. We find Frederick R. Koch, he's alive. We find the fire in London, then eventually leads me to the heist, which takes me then to Donati's murder, which is just days before the fire that I'd found and a couple weeks before he arrives in my mother's life. Yeah, of course the story just got bigger. Why not? Imagine that Sunday evening on November 30th, 2025, when I hit send on that fiduciary breach email. A total collision occurred. For me, it was the final, undeniable proof of my investigation. For the administration at Harvard, it was a sudden, violent reality check. The moment they realized the investigation they thought was under control was actually a deception orchestrated by a con man, and that the true forensic evidence of their massive fiduciary breach was now sitting officially in their inbox. 3 weeks later, the final piece fell into place. I realized Anthony Amore was the one who signed that Change.org petition on May 28th, 2025. Then the timeline erupted. The Anthony Amore collision, the Robert Gentile and Robert Whitman intersection, all the Koch brothers standing right there. Those receiving these emails prior to that moment of discovery got to be a part of watching me unravel it, piece by piece. Who else could tell you this story if not the person who walked it? When standing up for this story, I've tried everything you can think of. If you can think of it, I have likely tried it. I've gone through the whole list of options of what to try with the AI. I have had people make suggestions to me. I've tried them all. I've contacted the whistleblower organizations too. Nothing. Silence. When you spend 15 years uncovering a truth that the world is trying to hide, you realize that an investigation is like a painting. It takes time, sacrifice, and a true persistence to finish. Now that the canvas is complete, the room is silently watching, but the personal cost of standing in that room alone is a weight nobody sees. I didn't wake up one day and decide this was going to be my life for the next 15 years, which, by the way, has been very lonely journey. Prior to the past year and the amazing discoveries I've made, my family and those around me wouldn't even allow me to discuss this story. They are frustrated that I won't give it up. They don't understand why I won't stop. It's that believe in yourself. It's my journey. It isn't that they don't believe me. It is that they don't believe in the institutions I'm reaching out to. They believe no one is ever going to step forward to help me stand up for what I'm standing up for. Isn't that sad? You know the worst part? After 15 years so far, they are right. As of December 2025, my mother is back and excited for all the discoveries I've made over the past year. She still believes no one is going to step forward, but she is happy finally knowing the full picture of her story and the exact reality of the man who visited with her for months. Those art encounters occurred at the Trading Post Flea Market in Okeechobee, Florida, just 45 minutes from Palm Beach. That physical flea market is about to be torn down, but the forensic record we built from it can never be demolished. Let's be completely real about the forces at play here. We all know an institution like Harvard University isn't going to sit back and continue to let anyone openly publish statements that tie them to this story if my math weren't accurate. They have all the money, all the power, and a massive legal apparatus at their disposal. Look at the math of risk assessment. We can contrast a multi-million dollar lawsuit track record against a multi-billion dollar silence in episode 16. We all know William Koch has never hesitated to send his high-priced legal lawyers that he calls his badgers after anyone who crosses his path. Yet, when it comes to the forensic proof I'm putting on the record, there is total paralysis. Not a single cease and desist. If I were wrong, they would have shut me down years ago. Their refusal to issue a single legal challenge is the ultimate confirmation that the ledger's correct, and that truth remains the ultimate legal defense. While we all know the facts I'm sharing are true, not one single institutional insider has stepped forward to stand with me. The silence from the establishment is total, but for the personal side of this lonely journey, my sister-in-law Liz is the only one who didn't shut me out. She's the one who gave me the strength and confidence to make the podcast. She kept saying, "They have to hear you tell this story." That deep bond with my sister-in-law formed while navigating my husband, her brother's illness, a battle I'm still navigating right now. Moving from Florida up here to Michigan to get treatment at the University of Michigan. Those already monitoring this investigation include law enforcement and forensic institutions like the FBI, the Art Loss Register, Harvard University, Boston College, the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, State of Massachusetts, Robert Whitman, and Cambridge University. The global media, NBC, ABC, CBS, Fox News, BBC, CNN, Reuters, The Guardian, and the Daily Mail. Investigative and regional press include the New York Times, the New York Post, the Washington Post, Boston Herald, Boston.com, the Boston Globe, Brave New Films, WBUR, Telegram, Newsday, and NPR. The market gatekeepers, Christie's, Sotheby's, and the Lloyds of London. Those recently welcomed to the room include the Miami Herald, News 7, the Okeechobee County Sheriff's Office, the Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office, WPLG in Miami, WPTV in West Palm Beach, the Smithsonian, WOKC, iHeartMedia, WGBH, TMZ, Jammin' 94.5, and the Norton Museum of Art. I've also included in this network realtors, wealth management firms, car dealerships, bakers, universities, and more, building the most diverse independent group possible to ensure this story cannot be buried in the shadows. If you happen to know any of the individuals or institutions I'm implicating here, I guarantee you are looking at them differently now. For those opening and reading my newsletters, if your name or organization is mentioned and you are reading my newsletters, then you know exactly how high the likelihood is that the others I'm stating are opening and reading my newsletters too. According to my analytics, my open rate ranges from 50 to 80%. That is an outstanding open rate. Look at the power in the room. At the end of December 2025, I came to a heavy realization that shifted another layer of this struggle. I realized Anthony Amore wasn't looking for the art, he was guarding the timeline. Here I am, a nobody, shouting this story while the world looks at Anthony Amore as the director of security, a Harvard graduate, and assumes he's on the job. The establishment's logic is simple. If he isn't helping her, she must be a crank. But let's look at the actual math of his career. When you audit his background against industry standards, his entire tenure is a massive anomaly. The resume gap: prior to 2005, his resume had zero connection to art history, or cultural property investigations. He was a federal bureaucrat working for the FAA and the TSA at Logan Airport, focusing on passenger screening and regulatory compliance. He was an administrator, not a detective. He was hired 15 years after the heist, learned art crime on the fly, and used the museum's tragedy to build a personal brand. The celebrity author anomaly is an extremely rare for a security director to write true crime thrillers about others' heists while his own museum's frames sit empty. Most security directors are legally prohibited from doing this, yet he has published book after book, stealing Rembrandt's The Art of the Con, effectively leveraging his title precisely because the art remains missing. Anthony Moore is not merely a security director, he is the ultimate keeper of the missing. You don't stay in a cold case position for 2 decades unless you're guarding the door. If he didn't know exactly where the pieces sit and how the grand recovery is scripted to unfold, he wouldn't still be there, managing the clock until the final act begins. Which performance do you want? Anthony Moore's scripted con, or a billionaire's truth? You cannot lecture on art law while your 20-year tenure serves as the primary evidence of its failure. I want to also return to a previous newsletter from August 5th, 2025, titled We Are Not Afraid, a challenge to HuffPost and Brave New Films. Visit crimeandcanvaspodcast.com, click on the evidence link in the top navigation to find this newsletter. You need to read this issue to understand my determination and persistence. I wonder which news agency is going to report this story first. The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum art heist has been solved. My name is Suzanne Kenny, and my mother's 1991 and 1992 art encounters at her flea market booth in Okeechobee, Florida, solved it. Let's be very clear, I am not an armchair detective. I am a whistleblower with first-hand art encounters from 1991 and 1992 involving my mother. Art encounters 45 minutes from Palm Beach. A whistleblower story isn't public knowledge. That is why they're called a whistleblower. I am proud to stand up for the truth that everyone else is too afraid to touch. Standing with Mary, standing with Isabella, standing for Boston. Where do you stand? Visit crimeandcanvaspodcast.com to read the timeline for yourself and sign the change.org petition. And remember, if you're going through a similar struggle, if you have a voice that needs to be heard, visit thenobodymandate.com to learn how you can get help. Thank you for joining me on the Crime and Canvas podcast. This is Suzanne Kenny. I'm grateful for your time and your willingness to hear this story. Let's always remember the truth is still the truth, even if no one believes it, or even if they try to ignore it.